Great. Well, I would like to welcome, I mentioned earlier, our innovation partner for today, Food for the Hungry, and we're really delighted to have a special session with them. So welcome to the stage, Dennis Mahoney here, who is the Director of Integrated Partnerships at Food for the Hungry, and Kevin Schwartz, who is the Executive Director at Geeks Without Frontiers. Love that name. So we're going to be talking about last mile innovation. But Dennis, first, I think last time we saw each other was in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. I know you are doing the circuit of the conferences right now. I just came from Miami, headed to New York for the UN Water Conference. South by Southwest, Austin's a little bit of a different venue than we're typically at. So I'd love to hear, how has it been so far? What are the conversations you're having? And what brought you to Austin for this?
Well, thank you so much for having us. We are so excited to be here and are so grateful to be in the room with so many different change agents. The thing that we love about South by Southwest is this idea of, instead of just focusing on the problems, really focusing on what does flourishing look like? What are the solutions? And I think there's just an excitement and an attitude of hope and of possibility. So that's something that's been honestly very refreshing, to be in a room with folks who are really thinking about what does it mean for folks to really be thriving in their environment. Some of the conversations that we've been having that have been really giving me life is, we had a great conversation with Dell talking about what does it mean to create digital profiles for indigenous populations so that they can figure out how to stem against shocks and tremors before they even happen. Another really great conversation we had was with Intel, where they were talking about what does it mean to be able to provide different types of learning programs for populations in the Dominican Republic so that people are able to really transcend their educational level. And one other one that was really exciting was right now there's currently a $1 billion investment that the Dominican Republic government is doing in the hospitality industry, talking with folks like the Hard Rock or Marriott, saying what does it mean for us to do some workforce development programs to really develop that next generation of leaders in that industry. But as you can see from all of these topics, it really has to do with that next level of transcendence.
So at Food for the Hungry, you really take a holistic view of addressing hunger through poverty eradication, resilience strengthening, and as we've talked about today and through a lot of the conversations that have been happening this weekend, the issue of hunger is, it's a climate issue, it's a health issue, it's an education issue, it's a gender issue, an equity issue, it's all of those things. And so you really look at solving that through a wide lens. You also look at not only working with local communities, but a broad range of stakeholders, including the private sector. So can you talk us a little bit about that integrated approach and how that helps you think about more innovative ways to address hunger?
Absolutely. So at Food for the Hungry, we have this audacious dream of ending poverty through relationships. And that requires two types of relationships. We believe that, number one, every global problem has a local solution. So over the last 52 years, we really believe in listening to the communities we serve. 98.9% of our staff is indigenous to the countries we serve, and they live there, they know those families, and are able to say, hey, this is the needs that folks are bringing. These are the ways that people want to be creative. And then also, we know at Food for the Hungry that nothing can be fixed by one organization, one company. It doesn't matter how big you are or how big of a budget you have. It's going to take all of us to come together. So that's really informed this new approach that we've started taking over the last year, where we said, how do we create ecosystem approaches to systematic problems? You might say, what does that actually mean, right? It sounds like a lot of buzzwords, but for us, it's come to mean working with partners who may be better at things than we might be, and saying, we know our core asset is long-term relationships, trusted relationships where we can listen to the people that we serve. How do we find partners who are gonna say, hey, we have markets that will be able to actually help those people? So two pilots that we're running right now. One is in Uganda, where we are working to build relationships with telecommunications, with tower companies, and folks like that to really connect small shareholder farmers to the digital tools that they're gonna need to thrive, whether that's mobile banking, whether that's access to market linkages. But it's really saying, how do we connect with the businesses who are already trying to expand markets in these around shared value and implement it? In northern Uganda, we're working with South Sudanese mothers who are coming over and saying, how do we develop a postnatal app that will give them push notifications to tell them how to best care for their children, because they're already juggling so much. And this has also informed our grant strategy. As we go to in pursuit of some of these US government grants, we say, how do we bring different partners into that and do, whether it's cost share or whether it's saying you have an innovative tool that we can implement into our grant process. So one that we're really excited about was with a telehealth group when we went for a Cambodia bid, and being able to say we have this hub and spoke model that can really reach those in rural communities to revamp the entire system of health education there.
Yeah, and an example of one of these partnerships is with Geeks Without Frontiers, and you have the N50 project. We are looking to bridge that digital divide, whether it's in the rural part of Africa or indigenous communities or people fleeing Ukraine. So can you talk to us a little bit about this project and how bridging that digital divide connects to the broader goal of addressing hunger?
Absolutely, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. Really appreciate that. The N50 project, I like to joke, is sort of starting small. We're just focused on Earth and just half the population. That's what N50 stands for, is the next 50% of the world's population that's not using the internet. And there could be a variety of reasons for that. But there's a little bit of an underlying story there also. And it's that this notion that technology has the potential to uplift some people. In fact, it's necessary for so many of these uplift capabilities that many organizations are trying to do. But also at its heart, technology is also a divider. It's the thing that creates the divide because it favors privilege first. So without intentionality, without an effort to bring it to the places where it's hardest, this divide will just continue to grow and not shrink. So we have to be here. And we've also learned that our partners are really wanting to do this work, whether it's great partners like Food for the Hungry, Dell, Intel, some of these others you noticed, up to 115 now are actually in our ecosystem. They want to do this work, the intention is there, but the capability is not there. It's very difficult for a large organization to go all the way to the community outcomes, the human outcomes in a village in Africa or in the deserts of America or fleeing refugees in Ukraine, like we mentioned. So Geeks Without Frontiers is that nonprofit in the middle that helps to make that bridge between the organizations and to fill in the gaps anywhere that they might be.
Yeah, so I know we've talked a little bit earlier with, in the Ag Tech panel around the role of markets, right? And there's probably not a good market incentive for reaching some of these last mile innovations here. So can you talk a little bit about that role and how you think about creating market incentives and what that means for being able to reach these hardest reached communities, and what are some of those obstacles that you face?
Yeah, so all of our projects begin with sustainability in mind. And for us, sustainability means it's got to get to be a marketplace. So it may take philanthropy to kickstart something, to demonstrate something, or to overcome a historical marginalization that's in place. But there should be a goal towards creating a marketplace. And so when we can bring in innovative technology, broadband infrastructures that lower the costs and increase the accessibility of it, while working with communities to increase their participation, get that demand aggregation of both people and services, so that it is more likely that a company will want to do business here. And in some cases, when we introduce competition, that helps as well too. So that's the trick.
And Dennis, how does this connect to, like, thinking about that bridging the digital divide, to some of the other work you're trying to do in resilient strengthening and poverty eradication? What are some of the things that can help unlock?
Absolutely. When we think about resilience, there's two things that we have in mind. One is, how do we unlock potential and really drive that to its most productive area? The other is, how do we mitigate risks? How do we help communities be able to absorb as well as be transformed? And being able to create market linkages, bringing in those, really helps connect relationally these communities to the outside world. It gives them agency to be able to say, how do I actually want to have choice over my economic development? How do I have choice over where I sell my goods? So it's by bringing in folks like the N50 group, it's bringing in those partners to these communities, to these last mile areas, that we're able to see communities really recognize that agency and see their hopes realized. And building on that digital divide, just starting with that broadband opens up a slew of options, whether it's educational apps, whether it's market linkages, whether it's being able to know when weather patterns are changing. So it really all builds in that resilience area.
And what is kind of next on the horizon for this partnership? You talked a little bit about looking for long-term partners, really building that trust. So maybe talk a little bit about what that looks like for you all, maybe how this partnership came to be, and then what's next for you.
Sure. I think, like a lot of good partners, we were introduced by somebody else, right? People find that they have natural allies and thinks things work together, and so we were introduced as potential partners, and we found a number of different ways that we can work, and we're exploring several of those right now. One of which is this notion that if we can create demonstration models, like in Uganda, where we look to connect 10 schools that can also serve as anchor institutions for communities for broadband and have it meet their needs, that might be something that we can take forward to scale to the country, probably with the support of the government, probably with support of other grant entities and so forth. That would be a successful model. So we can create the demonstration and then show how it can be scaled and amplified. In other cases, there are already grants in place where we can say, look, here's the digital layer that needs to go with this. If you want to work on the healthcare system in Cambodia, for example, you're not going to do that without connecting clinics and having broadband available and telehealth and things like that. So we can be that digital layer that goes into these opportunities in communities. So again, whatever it takes, because the marginalization happened for a variety of reasons, and it's ragged, why there's a divide there. But whatever it takes to bridge the gap, we'll do.
Yeah, for us, it's really about digitizing our programs that are actually, Food for the Hungry works in health, education, economic development. It's how do we bring a digital component to that? But also, how do we bring a localized approach, right? How do we go into these countries and into these communities and connect businesses, digital companies that are already in Uganda to this ecosystem that we are cultivating and creating? So it's both grass tops and grassroots.
So we have a lot of innovators in the room joining us online. What would you like to see them do more of to be able to particularly reach communities in the last mile?
Yeah. When I think about that, I just think about a story that I experienced not too long ago. I was at a similar event to this in Nashville, and innovation is exciting, it's fun when we're talking about it, but it's also really hard work. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of commitment. And I remember I was listening to this doctor who's sharing about these clinics that he has across East Africa, in 13 countries, and I remember thinking, man, that guy's really doing it. He's really got the boots on the ground, the relationships to make it happen. And at the end of it, he actually came up to me and said, "You're with Food for the Hungry?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I wanted to let you know, Food for the Hungry helped me when I was a child in the 80s and 90s, helping me with my education, helping me get connected to schools, helping me realize that I could dream big dreams." And I was shook. I was so shocked. And it really made me realize that each one of us has one life to give. Each one of us has an opportunity to contribute. And it takes going to the table, it takes sitting there, having those conversations, and staying at the table, even when it's hard, even when we're trying to figure out what are the shared values that we're in the pursuit of. And so my invitation to all of the innovators is to stay in the fight, stay in it, and continue to explore areas outside of what you would normally go to. That's why South by Southwest and Devex makes such a big deal to these countries that we're trying to serve and these people that we ultimately want to see flourish and be the change makers in their own society.
Kevin?
Thanks for that. I want to say that N50 Project was built to answer the very question you just asked. What can you do? That's why we're here. It's a big tent with a big table inside where everyone can be, and we find the natural allies that can come together to create the right solutions based on what a community tells us that they need to help drive this digital participation and digital adoption. So we've made the barrier to entry into N50 zero. There's $0 to join, 0 annual dues. It's not about that. It's about bring a project, participate in a project, bring your time, talent, and treasure to this in ways that work for your business so that we can help to lift these communities.
So what are you looking for rest of the event today? What kind of new partnerships, ideas? Is there anything you've heard or learned that you feel like, oh, wow, I didn't think about that before?
So one thing that we're really excited about doing is connecting with folks who are already working on the ground in these countries that we're working with, because they know the people as well. Connecting with Hello Tractor today was a really great opportunity to say, hey, I'm actually going to be in Kenya in 2 weeks. Let's meet there. Let's talk there. Let's look at the communities. So I think those things, looking at where there's overlap and where there's opportunity, but just being open to conversations and never knowing where one will unlock that next opportunity, like the N50 project.
And we see it the same way. As we meet organizations, we find out that there are fantastic work on decades of work on the ground, working with communities to solve this, and yet there's still a need for a digital layer in their work. And so if there's other organizations that have that same need, we can fill that capacity. We want to meet and talk about ways that we can do work together.
Great. Well, I know you have a whole team here, Food for the Hungry, maybe those of you here can raise your hand in case you're interested in connecting. There's the Food for Hungry table over there. In case you're interested in connecting with any of them to learn more about the work they're doing, maybe ways that you can partner with them. But thank you both so much for your time today.
And on that line, I'd like to say we have Dr. Erin Bound-Anderson here from our Geeks Frontiers team, and Dr. Michael Potter, one of our founders.
Great. And you're based in Austin.
Yes, we are.
All right. Well, I love it. I love when you come to Austin to meet people who are in Kenya, and this is great. That's what I love about our work. But thank you all for joining us and for being a partner with us today. We really appreciate it. Always enjoy working with you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Looking forward to connecting.
Thank you so much.
Great.